For conservative and classical liberal and libertarian Aussies, the election was an agonising slow-motion car crash to watch. We all knew things weren't going to end too well for us. We prayed for luck and a miracle, but we never expected it was going to be this bad. And while a lot of blame has been levelled at the feet of Peter Dutton, it's important to remember that until around January, Dutton's star was on the rise. The failure wasn't Dutton. It was Dutton being held back by the nervous Nellies in the party who wanted to play it safe and adopt the small target strategy from January to May. Instead of sticking to classical liberal centre-right policies and standing up for core values with a clear set of messages, well-defined and well-defended, and looking strong and leader-like, the party began to push for Labor-light style messaging. It started to cower to the scaremongering of the left, leaving Dutton looking not softer and warmer and more appealing as they'd hoped, but weak and trapped. Nowhere was this more evident than in the scolding he copped on the Today Show from a teleprompter reader with an attitude.
The opposition leader joins us live now from Adelaide. Pete, good morning to you. Conveniently, you're in the city of churches. Will you be asking for forgiveness from female voters?
I think I am today. Look, I think we've made a mistake in relation to this policy, Sarah, and I think it's important that we say that and recognise it. I think Labor's been able to get away with twisting this.
Peter. This is more than that. This is quite a backflip. I mean, this was one of your signature policies. If you're making this kind of a mistake during an election campaign, how can you be trusted as Prime Minister? The public does like to hear when you make mistakes and you admit to them, right? But this is something that you could have thought about before. It was clearly not a nuanced approach, this working from home. And it really adds to the argument that you might have a problem with female voters. Obviously, you're trying to target them here. And then when you couple that with disendorsing a New South Wales Liberal candidate, Ben Britton, who made those comments about women not being in the ADF, I mean, it's not the best look for your party. It's not just the working from home that you're walking back from. It's also the public service job cuts, initially targeting 41,000 jobs. Now you're walking back from that. How will you find the billions you need for your Medicare plan?
Well, Sarah, that was always the plan, that there would be natural attrition and a hiring freeze, and that achieved over
Peter,
the 4 or 5 year period the numbers we did. There's no change.
The plan, but it wasn't the plan. You wanted to cut back 41 jobs. You wanted to introduce working from home. You've walked back from both of those. How can they have both always been the plan? It doesn't make sense.
Well, Sarah, you asked a question about the costing. There's no change to the costing at all, because the original plan of the natural attrition and the freezing was what we'd always had. It's the way in which Labor's contorted that into something else.
It is just agony watching that complete emasculation. He can't push back too hard, although I say he has even more of a women problem. The left have been using that "the Liberals have a women problem" trick for more than a decade now. Same thing every election. Call them sexist, call them racist. But how dumb are we that we haven't worked this out yet and we keep falling for the same old trap time and time again? At some point, you've got to stand up to the bullies and call it out. Sorry, Sarah, but that's not fair. Our country is in the middle of a productivity slump and we need to fix that. But we can't fix the debt and inflation and get interest rates down and really help struggling Aussies trying to get into their first homes and manage the terrible inflation. We think there's a bit too much working from home going on among government employees, and we need to dial it back a bit. We've listened and adjusted the policy now to help hardworking mums who benefit from working from home and the flexibility that that affords. And we're going to get the balance right and fix this problem so that everyone benefits. It isn't that hard to stand up for your values and principles as a party if you just do a little work on the messaging and get it right and stop defending yourself against the bullying attackers on the left. Instead, call them out for what they truly are. It's called fighting and leading. And without it, the Liberals will never win elections. Joining me in the studio today are three very wise men. One of them is the founder of the National Conservative Institute of Australia and lawyer Dan Ryan. Dan, what would you have done in that situation?
Well, it was an aggressive interview, obviously, and you sometimes get those. But, I mean, look, the Labor Party can't define what a woman is. There's all this talk about, the Liberal Party's woman problem. But if they actually summed up the courage to talk to real women, instead of fumbling in the dark trying to work out what one is, they might discover there's actually quite, even the teal yoga mums are quite receptive to an idea that mass immigration should be cut. We saw in the eastern suburbs of Sydney recently sort of chaotic scenes with very aggressive selective examination where they had to bring in the riot squad. Mums worry about mass immigration pushing their own kids out of the housing market. young women in Europe and in Australia do worry about their own personal safety in increasingly diverse suburbs. So those arguments can be made in a sensible, serious way, in an adult way, with the gravitas of a major political party behind you. And if you don't make those arguments and you don't make them clearly, then only the fringe makes those arguments, political fringe makes them. And the yoga mums in the eastern suburbs and the nice parts of town aren't going to listen to those people, but they will listen to the argument if it's put in a professionally competent way.
Yes, and strongly. Okay, I want to just play a clip from the IPA, Institute of Public Affairs podcast. This is John Roscombe interviewing from the IPA, interviewing Tony Abbott just late this week. Let's roll that particular clip now, if we can, Aaron.
We keep on saying, don't worry, don't go back and find out what we believe in. Don't have the arguments between the left and the right. Don't talk about why we abandon freedom of speech and freedom. And we've just had 3 years of nothing happening. Peter Dutton saying, keep quiet, don't rock the boat, and we'll just get in to government. So I'm going to put back and say, why don't we actually say this is really, really bad?
Yeah.
And we almost have to, well, some have said burn it down. I wouldn't go that far, but say start again rather than just saying, oh, if we just do the campaign a bit better, if we have a slightly different leader who's a bit more likeable, everything will be okay.
I don't want to minimise the scale of the defeat, but on the other hand, I don't want people to lose hope. And it is important to remember that what seems dire today can change quite quickly. For instance, it's only 18 months back that it was Labor that had completely lost touch with the people by supporting the divisive race-based voice.
And the Liberals didn't take any lessons from The Voice. Peter Dutton never spoke about The Voice. He sidelined Jacinta. He refused to talk about culture. He had 17 different positions on welcome to country. Again, aren't you just saying that don't worry, it'll be okay when it won't be?
No, I would never say after a defeat of this magnitude against a government which was so eminently beatable that nothing needs to change.
You would have won. But move on.
But I do want to reassure people that there is hope, that the next election is winnable, that the Liberal Party does have a future. I think we'd built a good foundation. The problem was that this year I don't know whether we became complacent because we thought we were in front.
I'd argue we became safe.
And therefore risk averse.
Yes.
Risk averse.
And that's what MPs have been talking to me about since Saturday.
This year, really from January on, we failed to pick fights. And when we did pick fights on, for argument's sake, trying to get public servants back into the office, as soon as we came under a bit of pressure, we pulled back.
Sure did. Joining us on the panel, we have Graeme Haycroft, who is the founder of Red Unions, but also a former National Party Queensland senior committee member and Liberal National Party of Queensland committee member. Graeme, John Roscombe to me there on track. Tony Abbott making all the usual, with all due respect, making all the usual bloody excuses. Sorry, but it infuriates me.
Yes. Peter.
Yeah.
That was the point where the people realised that Peter Dutton was not a leader. And Tony's just sort of covering up the harsh reality of it. Look, there's two things in elections that people look for. The first is they want an identification with the leader, that the leader is of their same mind. Right? That's the first thing. And the second thing is they want to know that that leader will fight for them. Now, how did Dutton go on those two principles in that particular interview with the lass? He failed both of them. You need to understand how important these things are. And as I said before, we need to look at restructuring the Constitution to get the right leaders in. But it ultimately comes back to leaders understanding what needs to be done and said in the elections. And Dutton sure as hell didn't know what to do, and his advisors are even worse.
Professor James Allan from University of Queensland Law School, your thoughts on that?
I don't disagree with anything, but I have a slightly different take. Look, donations to political parties, that's public information in the US. The legacy media leans left to an incredible extent, 9.5 to 1, something like that. Every time you appear on the legacy media, you know that they don't want you to win. There are the odd exceptions, but not very many. And Dutton needs to watch how Poilievre in Canada handles the press, or Trump. You know, say what you will about Trump. He knows that the press hates him, and he has completely marginalized them. And poll after poll now, they're the least trusted.
Dutton was doing that originally. He took down an ABC reporter early on. It was doing very well, and then, of course, it all changed.
All he had to say was, look, Donald Trump won the preponderance of married women voters. He didn't win single women, but he won the preponderance of married women voters. And all he had to say is, we are only dealing with Canberra. It's only Canberra public servants who are going to be forced back to work. They don't vote for us anyway. You would have to come into work every day, whoever her name was. You could not do the job from home. And what you're doing is you're undermining the wealth of your children. And I'm not going to sit here and listen to you defend working from home. It's a disaster. You know, but he didn't do anything. It was just awful. And I don't know if he has beliefs anymore. I used to think Peter Dutton had beliefs. If he did, he became supine. As Graeme said, the worst possible way to deal with the press is to fumble around and apologize. Never apologize for any policy you're taking to the voters.
All right.
Unless you're Peter Beattie. He got away with it.
Peter Beattie was very good at apologising.
After the fact, though, right? After the fact.
He was the best.
Those were the days when in crisis management we would say, you know, an apology would shock people. It'd be like, oh, look, they apologised. Aren't they good? You know, these days it doesn't work like that anymore because the people are getting a bit used to it. All right, we'll be back in a sec. I want to tell you about a fantastic initiative that's happening out of Canberra right now. It's called the Awards for Men in Leadership. The awards are given out on International Men's Day, which is November 19. They're designed to combat the increasing denigration of masculinity in our culture and the widespread discrimination against males inside and outside the workplace. The goal is to lift the well-being of boys and men and facilitate healthy collaboration between men and women. The awards for men in leadership are designed to inspire men to make a bigger contribution to family and community and to elevate positive male role models. There's a $10,000 scholarship for studies and professional development, public recognition for the winners, and a year of mentorship and executive coaching for each recipient. It's targeted at young men and middle-aged guys who fought their way up from some other kind of disadvantage. This is the third year of the awards and it'll be the biggest yet. To find out more, just search up the Awards for Men in Leadership on Facebook. That was a segment from a recent episode of our fortnightly news commentary show, The Other Side, with me, Damian. If you liked it, support us. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube right now so you don't miss a thing. It's totally free. Just click that subscribe button and the little bell. And check out our Other Side Unplugged show too, and join our mission to actually do something and change Aussie media for the better at othersidetv.com.au. That's othersidetv.com.au. Check it out now.